Imagine this. The sun rises over Rome, casting a golden glow on the magnificent arches of the Coliseum. A breathtaking sight, isn't it? But look closer. The pale light illuminates dark stains on the stone, the remnants of yesterday's bloodshed. This is where our story begins, in the heart of an empire that perfected death as entertainment. Welcome, history lovers. Today, we're journeying back to ancient Rome, not just to admire its architecture, but to uncover the chilling truth behind its most famous landmark, the Colosseum. We'll explore how a simple funeral rite spiraled into a colossal spectacle of state-sponsored violence, and what it tells us about power, control, and the very soul of a civilization. It all started small, back in 264 BC, to honor their deceased father. The sons of Decimus Junius, Brutus staged a fight to the death between three pairs of slaves. It was a private, solemn affair, a human sacrifice to appease the spirits of the dead. But a seed was planted. Over the next 2 centuries, this grim tradition grew, moving from private funerals to public events. Ambitious politicians saw an opportunity. What better way to win the favor of the people than by offering them a spectacle of life and death? By the time of the late Republic, gladiatorial games were the ultimate tool for political campaigning. Throwing extravagant games meant winning votes, and the Roman public developed an insatiable appetite for the arena's brutal drama. Then came the emperors, and with them the Coliseum. Inaugurated in 80 AD, this grand amphitheater wasn't just a venue. It was a statement. It was a monument to Roman power, engineering, and, most importantly, its ability to control life and death on an unprecedented scale. The games held here were no longer just about honoring the dead or winning votes. They were propaganda written in blood. Think about the gladiators themselves. We often imagine them as equals, locked in a fair contest of skill. The reality was far more complex and symbolic. Many gladiators were forced to wear the armor and carry the weapons of Rome's conquered enemies, the Samnites, the Gauls, the Thracians. So, when a gladiator dressed as a Gaul fell in the sand, the crowd wasn't just watching a man die. They were reliving the conquest of Gaul. Every slash, every parry, every death was a reenactment of Rome's military victories, reinforcing the idea of Roman superiority to the tens of thousands of spectators. It was a history lesson taught with swords and shields, a constant reminder that Rome was the master of the world. But the spectacle didn't stop with human combat. Rome's power had to be seen to dominate not just other nations, but nature itself. The empire's vast reach was demonstrated by the sheer variety of exotic animals dragged from the farthest corners of the known world to die in the arena. Lions from Africa, tigers from Persia, crocodiles from the Nile, leopards from the Caucasus, bears from Scotland, and even giraffes, creatures most Romans had never seen before, were hunted and slaughtered in elaborate spectacles called Venations. These hunts weren't about sportsmanship. They were about showcasing the empire's logistical might. The ability to capture, transport, and ultimately kill these powerful symbols of the wild proved that nothing was beyond Rome's grasp. The roar of a dying lion was the sound of the empire flexing its muscles. Let's be clear. There was nothing fair about what happened in the Colosseum. The concept of a level playing field was a theatrical illusion. Condemned prisoners were thrown into the arena with nothing but wooden swords to face trained gladiators or starving beasts. It was a death sentence disguised as a fight. The organizers even designed specific types of armor that were intentionally crippling, meant to prolong the agony and make the spectacle more interesting for the crowd. And it wasn't just men. Women, known as *Gladiatrices*, were also forced to fight, often as a bizarre novelty act for the baying crowds. The entire system was engineered for maximum bloodshed and suffering, with the odds always stacked in favor of a gruesome finale. Executions became a form of grotesque theater. Criminals weren't just killed. Their deaths were turned into elaborate, cruel performances. Some were dressed in flammable tunics and burned alive as human torches to illuminate the evening games. Others were forced to reenact scenes from mythology. Imagine being cast in the role of Orpheus, given a lyre, and then torn apart by bears. Or playing the part of Prometheus, chained to a rock, while a man dressed as an eagle tore at your insides. Another popular execution involved dressing a victim as Icarus, hoisting them to the top of the arena, and then dropping them to their death. This wasn't justice. It was a sick theatrical cruelty, designed to entertain and to serve as a terrifying warning about the consequences of defying Roman law. The emperors themselves were the ultimate showrunners, using the arena as their personal stage. They bent the elements to their will for the sake of entertainment. The Colosseum's floor could be flooded to stage mock naval battles. Or *Naumachie*, where thousands of prisoners and captives were forced to fight and die on full-sized ships. These were not simulations. Men drowned and bled out for the amusement of the crowd. The personal whims of the emperors often led to the most depraved acts. The historian Suetonius tells us that Emperor Caligula, when he ran out of criminals to execute during a show, ordered his guards to seize a random section of the audience and throw them to the beasts instead. Emperor Nero, who fancied himself an artist, used the arena to stage his own theatrical productions, often with fatal consequences for the performers. And then there was Commodus, the son of the wise Marcus Aurelius. Commodus saw himself not as a statesman but as a divine performer. He would enter the arena himself, dressed as the hero Hercules, complete with a lionskin cloak and a club. But his opponents weren't worthy adversaries. He would club disabled people to death or shoot arrows from a safe platform at chained ostriches and giraffes, all while demanding the applause of the senators, who had no choice but to cheer on the pathetic and bloody display. The emperor himself had become the star of Rome's theater of cruelty. Even the so-called good emperors were not immune. Trajan, celebrated for his public works and military successes, marked his victory over Disha with games that lasted for 123 days, involving 11,000 animals and 10,000 gladiators. Bloodshed had become the official language of triumph and power. But not everyone was cheering. Voices of dissent began to rise, warning of the corrosive effect these spectacles were having on the Roman soul. The Stoic philosopher Seneca the Younger attended the games and was horrified by what he saw. He wrote, "I've come home more greedy, more ambitious, more voluptuous, and even more cruel and inhuman, because I've been among humans." He argued that constant exposure to such brutality hardened the heart and stripped away empathy, turning citizens into monsters. The arena also became a stage for martyrdom. Christians, who refused to worship the Roman gods and the emperor, were often condemned to the beasts. Their public deaths, meant to be a terrifying deterrent, were seen by their fellow believers as the ultimate act of faith. The sands of the Colosseum were soaked, not only with the blood of gladiators, but also with the blood of martyrs, a fact that would profoundly shape the future of the empire. The poet Juvenal, in a famous satirical critique, lamented that the Roman people, once masters of the world, no longer cared for politics or military duty. They craved only two things: panem, circenses, or bread and circuses. Free grain from the state and free, bloody entertainment from the emperor were enough to keep the population passive and distracted from the real problems facing the empire. In the end, the very thing that symbolized Rome's power also contributed to its decay. The games were astronomically expensive, draining the imperial treasury. The constant need for more victims, both human and animal, strained the resources of the provinces. The discipline of the army and the morals of the populace eroded. By the 5th century, as the Western Roman Empire crumbled under economic strain and external pressures, the great amphitheaters fell silent. The roars of the crowd and the cries of the dying faded away. The Colosseum stands today, a scarred but proud ruin. It's a UNESCO World Heritage Site and a symbol of Italy, visited by millions who marvel at its grandeur. But it's also a ghost, haunted by the memory of every scream, every cheer, and every life extinguished for sport. The arches that glow so beautifully at sunset once framed scenes of unimaginable cruelty. The story of the Colosseum is a chilling reminder of how easily entertainment can become a tool of control, and how a society can grow so numb to violence that it celebrates it. It teaches us that power built on suffering is fragile, and true strength lies not in the ability to dominate, but in the capacity for empathy and justice. The spectacle is over, the applause has faded, but the warning carved into its stones echoes through eternity. Thank you so much for joining me on this journey into Rome's dark past. If you found this exploration fascinating, please hit that like button and consider subscribing for more deep dives into history. Let me know in the comments what you think about the Roman games. Was it pure evil or a complex part of their culture? I'd love to hear your thoughts. Until next time, stay curious.